Prabhu, unless Lal Prabhuji wants to do that. Lal Prabhuji, you want to go with?
No, please go ahead, Ashok Prabhu. I think you would be the right person to do. And just one note, this is Anuttama Prabhu, the youth class is tomorrow evening at 4 o'clock. So this is not
Okay,
that
good.
one.
I saw the kids. I thought, uh-oh, I prepared the wrong class.
These are all young children, not youth.
Yeah, these young
very,
children.
These are very young children from
and
age
they're-
2 to
They're
5
very
only.
capable.
Yeah, and they're very young jnanis, like Kumaras.
Very
They
much.
have lot-
Very much.
So,
Thank you, bro. Ashok
So,
Prabhu.
Anuttama Prabhu, as you all know, he's a very prolific speaker and great communicator. His contribution to ISKCON are really numerous. He was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1976, and since then he's been following the path of Bhakti Yoga. He has served in many senior positions in ISKCON and the GBC. He gives various seminars, and really, I would like to. It's my pleasure to really welcome you to this congregation today. We have children, as you see, and then we have adults, and they'll be very excited to learn from you. Prabhu, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. So Lal Prabhu told me that I could choose any section of the 10th canto. So I prayed to Krishna and I opened the book a while ago and I came across Canto 10, Chapter 10, excuse me, Deliverance of the Yamal Arjuna Trees. So I thought we could read part of that section from the 10th canto. It's very instructive. So I'll read a whole series of verses and then read one purport and then discuss a little bit. And then if we have some time for questions, does that sound good, Prabhu?
Okay.
Okay, we have about an hour total. Is that correct?
Sure, Prabhu, yeah.
Okay, good.
45 minutes to an hour.
Okay, good. So I'll probably quit half an hour to 40 and hopefully have some time for some discussion and some questions. Okay.
Okay, Prabhu.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'll read the Sanskrit just from the very first text, and then after that I'll just read the English because I'm going to read a series so we get a little bit of the story going here. Again, this is 10:10:1. Shri Rajuvacha Kachitam Bhagavan etat tayo sapasya yatad vigarhitam karma yena va devarsheshtamaha. King Parikshit inquired from Sukadeva Goswami, O great and powerful saint, what was the cause of Nakula's and Manigriva's having been cursed by Narada Muni? What did they do that was so abominable that even Narada, the great sage, became angry at them? Please describe this to me. Then the next verse. Now I'll just read the English. Sukadeva Goswami continued, O King Parikshit, because the two sons of Kuvera had been elevated to the association of Lord Shiva, of which they were very much proud, they were allowed to wander in the garden attached to the Kailas hill on the bank of the Mandakini river. Taking advantage of this, they used to drink a kind of liquor called Varuni. Accompanied by women singing after them, they would wander in that garden of flowers, their eyes always rolling in intoxication. So those that don't know, this is leading up. This is like an inserted story. We just the previous chapters talking about the famous story of Yashoda tying Krishna with rope to the mortar stone. So now we're reading the history, what led up to the incident of him going into the backyard, so to speak, of Yashoda's home and pulling the mortar between the two trees that collapsed, and then the demigods were released from there. Those of you that are familiar with the story. So that's after this. So this is the part that's leading up to how did that happen? So continuing, Sukadeva Goswami speaking. Within the waters, the Mandakini Ganges, which are crowded with gardens of lotus flowers. Imagine crowded with flowers, crowded with lotus flowers. How beautiful must have been. The two sons of Kuvera would enjoy young girls just like two male elephants enjoying in the water with female elephants. O Maharaj Parikshit, by some auspicious opportunity for the two boys, the great saint Devarsha Naradi once appeared there by chance. Seeing them intoxicated with rolling eyes, he could understand their condition. Upon seeing Narada, the naked young girls of the demigods were very much ashamed. Afraid of being cursed, they covered their bodies with their garments. But the two sons of Kuvera did not do so. Instead, not caring about Narada, they remained naked. Seeing the two sons of the demigods naked and intoxicated by opulence and false prestige, Devarshi Narada, in order to show them special mercy, desired to give them a special curse. Thus he spoke as follows. Narada Muni said, among all the attractions of material enjoyment, the attraction of riches bewilders one's intelligence more than having beautiful bodily features, taking birth in an aristocratic family, and being learned. When one is uneducated, but falsely puffed up by wealth, the result is that one engages his wealth in enjoying wine, women, and gambling. And of course, here it's written, he's speaking to a king, so he's saying enjoying women. If you're talking to a female audience, you can say same thing as there. Women get intoxicated by association of men sometimes. So continuing, unable to control their senses, rascals who are falsely proud of their riches or their birth in aristocratic families are so cruel that to maintain their perishable bodies, which they think will never grow old or die, they kill poor animals without mercy. Sometimes they kill animals merely to enjoy an excursion. We say that's popular today. While living, one may be proud of one's body, thinking himself a very big man, minister, president, or even a demigod. But whatever one may be after death, this body will turn either into worms, into stool, or into ashes. If one kills more animals to satisfy the temporary whims of this body, one does not know that he will suffer in his next birth. For such a sinful miscreant must go to hell and suffer the results of his activities. So this is Narada. They're thinking about what's the plight of these two young men. They're intoxicated and they're carried away with their opulence. They're not understanding the reactions to their deeds. So then he goes on. I may skip a couple verses here. He says, while alive, does this body belong to its employer or to the self or to the father? He goes on analyzing like this. Who actually enjoys the body? They're thinking this body is meant for their own gratification. Atheistic fools and rascals. Excuse me. I'm on my phone. So normally if I'm on my computer, if I go to cough, I can push mute. But with my phone, it's harder to do. So forgive me for distracting coughing here. So atheistic fools and rascals are very much proud of wealth, fail to see things as they are. Therefore, returning them to poverty is the proper ointment for their eyes, so they may see things as they are. Again, this is Narada thinking, how can I help these young men that are so bewildered? At least a poverty-stricken man can realize how painful poverty is, and therefore he will not want others to be in a painful condition like his own. By seeing their faces, one whose body has been pricked by pins can understand the pain of others who are pin-pricked. Realizing that this pain is the same for everyone, he does not want others to suffer in this way. But one who has never been pricked by pins cannot understand this pain. Always hungry, longing for sufficient food, a poverty-stricken man gradually becomes weaker and weaker. Having no extra potency, his senses are automatically pacified. A poverty-stricken man, therefore, is unable to perform harmful, envious activities. In other words, such a man automatically gains the results of austerities and penances adopted by saintly persons. So he's thinking in his mind how these young men, they're so blessed by their success, but their success has actually become their downfall because they're allowing themselves to be bewildered by their opulences they have. Now he goes, saintly persons may freely associate with those who are poverty-stricken, but not with those who are rich. A poverty-stricken man, by association with saintly persons, very soon becomes uninterested in material desires, and the dirty things within the core of his heart are cleansed away. Saintly persons, sadhus, think of Krishna 24 hours a day. They have no other interest. Why should people neglect the association of such exalted spiritual personalities and try to associate with materialists, taking shelter of non-devotees, most of whom are proud or rich? Therefore, he concludes, since these two persons, drunk with the liquor named Varuni or Madhvi, and unable to control their senses, have been blinded by the pride of celestial opulence and have become attached to sense gratification, I shall relieve them of their false prestige. Having spoken thus, the great Saint Devarshi Narada returned to his ashram, known as Narayan Ashram, and Nalakuvara and Manigriva became twin Arjuna trees. So they're big, big demigods, but by Narada cursed them to take birth actually as trees. But then he also blessed them that they would get the darshan of Krishna. So just a couple of verses to conclude. So now it goes back to Krishna crawling in the yard of Yashoda. And the Supreme Personality of Krishna, of Godhead, Sri Krishna, to fulfill the truthfulness of the words of the greatest devotee Narada, slowly went to that spot where the twin Arjuna trees were standing. So they've been standing for 100 years, I think celestial years, a long time. Now Krishna is going to drag the mortar. In Krishna, the last verse I'll read, Krishna himself says, although these two young men are sons of the very rich Kuvera, and I have nothing to do with them, like Narada just said, saintly persons have nothing to do with wealthy people. So Krishna is saying, as God, I'm focusing on my devotees and let my other agencies take care of other people who are not my devotees. But says, I have nothing to do with them. But Devarsha Narada is my very dear and affectionate devotee. And therefore, because he wanted me to come face to face with them, I must do so for their deliverance. Having spoken thus, Krishna soon entered between the two Arjuna trees, and thus the big mortar to which he was bound turned crosswise and stuck between the two of them. By dragging behind him with great force the wooden mortar tied to his belly, the boy Krishna uprooted the two trees. By the great strength of the Supreme Person, the two trees with their trunks, leaves, and branches trembled severely and fell to the ground with a great crash. And then he goes on, they pray to the Lord, and the Lord offers them some benediction, and etc. But I wanted to particularly read this section and focus on this exchange with Narada Muni and these two sons of Kuvera. So it's interesting that this Krishna book, which or Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, I had the verse pulled up in my phone to read, and I can't because I had to switch from my computer to here. But the second canto of the Bhagavatam describes that this Bhagavatam is a unique shastra, and it directly leads everyone to Krishna. It puts aside all other type of materialistic religion. In my materialistic religion, it's understood from the Vedic perspective and the Vaishnava perspective especially, that the human form of life is meant for purification. That's the purpose of our being. We have a special opportunity. Unlike the lower species of life, they also, the birds have their families and they make their nests and they raise their children and they have their own forms of economic development. All the different animals, they defend themselves in various ways. So they're fulfilling the basic propensities of animal life. But human form of life is a chance to purify the consciousness and actually understand who we are as spiritual beings. So the Bhagavatam is particularly mentioning that by studying the Bhagavatam, we learn directly about the ultimate goal of life. There's no other distractions about how to perform different types of rituals to gain material prosperity or different things of this world. Those things, they come and they go, but the Bhagavatam is explaining that ultimately, if we really want to be satisfied, if we really want to be successful in life, then whether we're rich, whether we're poor, whether we have more difficulties or less difficulties in life, we all have the full opportunity to realize who we are as eternal beings, eternal relationship with Krishna or God. So excuse me, the whole Bhagavatam is full of these amazing stories, histories actually, of great souls and not such great souls, and all their challenges in trying to awaken this ultimate realization of God, ultimate relationship of Krishna. And I was thinking, it's just the parallels there with the Mahabharata. When we read the Mahabharata, it's such a fascinating story, and people are drawn into all of the drama and the excitement, and interspersed within there is so much spiritual knowledge. And of course, ultimately the jewel of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna himself speaks to Arjuna and delivers him from his ignorance and his illusion. So the Bhagavatam is like that, except it's not just that the Gita is there in the midst of all the drama. There's drama, then there's the realization, then there's the prayers, then there's the realization. So just like this, there's a few verses of the story, but very deeply entrenched in there, injected into all of these is this transcendental knowledge, this opportunity for us to actually understand some higher things. So this particular story is teaching a lot of wonderful things for all of us that we can take benefit from, including Narada here is explaining how generally in the world and in the society at large, people are more or less mad, we could say slightly crazy, about pursuing material benefits. The reason is described slightly crazy. I read recently something that about a little story about American habits of consumption. And I think they have Best Buy here. They have Best Buy here in Missouri.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, okay. In Washington, they also have Best Buy. There was some study that they found that something like, I forget the percentage, but it might have even been more than half of things people purchase at Best Buy, within 6 months, they've thrown them away. So, and on the other hand, you read these stories like around Christmas time, or maybe if there's some new product coming out, sometimes people, they camp out, right? They do that here. They camp out even in the middle of winter. There's a line going around the block because they have to be the first ones to get some new product because they're so excited about it. Why? Because they're thinking this thing is going to make me happy. But 6 months later, the same person is back in line waiting for the next version because they realized, that one, it has a few things. It needs some upgrades, isn't it? There's always upgrades. So no matter what you have, there's always an upgrade. And of course, part of the trick is like, I remember, if any of us had experience of buying a car, right? You go in to buy a car with a certain idea of what you think you need, what you think you can afford. The salesman and the sales manager, they are professionally trained to get you to upgrade, to get you to buy more than you think you need, to pay more than you really can. I remember a funny story in Washington, D.C. We had a young devotee that had come from Russia. This is probably 20 years ago. Very enthusiastic, bright young man. And he lived in the brahmacharya ashram, and then he had some kind of computer skills. He was going to go out. He got a job and, kind of transition into being a congregational member. He wanted to buy his first car, and he went by himself. And you can just imagine, like the eyes lighting up amongst the salespeople. They see this young 24-year-old or 22-year-old Russian guy who speaks English, but obviously is not so used to the American ways. And they kind of like see dollar signs. And he came back at the end of the day. I talked to him. I didn't know what was going on, but he told me later. He bought a new car. He bought an extended warranty for the car. He bought lifetime oil changes for the car. I mean, they sold them, like they say, right? Sold everything but the kitchen sink. I never heard of this before. At the car dealership, they sold him a life insurance policy. If you can imagine I didn't know they could sell life insurance policies at car dealers, but somehow, and he came back, he was all kind of like starry-eyed and I bought this car and I looked it over. It's like, okay, they took advantage of you on this one. They took advantage of you on that one. And I convinced him to go back and, cancel this, cancel, because he had 72 hours. Forget the life insurance. You get that somewhere else. Don't buy a lifetime oil thing. You're paying interest on it 20 years or 10 years before you need it. So he started to see things more clearly, but he was intoxicated with his opulence. I've got money. I can buy a car. Why not do this? Why not do that? And he got carried away. So this description is being given here with these sons of Kuvera. It's for us to understand. We should try to kind of, I think most of us will see ourselves a little bit. Maybe we don't, get drunk and go cavort at private lakes in the heavenly planets. But the same principle sometimes can affect us. We can get intoxicated and get carried away with material opulences that are presented for us. And again, we see that as sometimes here so much, again, the holiday seasons, they have their big, gigantic sales, and people, as I mentioned, they stand outside and then they get inside. Sometimes people, you read, they have a riot in the store. People get pushed and shoved and hurt because some lady grabs a sweater at 60% off and another lady wants the same sweater, and they start fighting with each other. This is like the craziness of kind of, the modern culture. And then unfortunately what happens is it intensifies, and people actually, they become envious of each other, and they think, okay, well, I got this car, but you got one that's got a $500 upgrade that I couldn't get. Or I went to the dealer, they didn't have the color that I wanted. I got another color, but now I see you got the color I wanted. Why did you get that? Why didn't I get that? Or why did you get the promotion at work, right? Those of you that work, I haven't worked in outside of ISKCON in decades, but I've heard it described by many people in the corporate world. They say it really is, as Prabhupada uses the expression too, English common expression, it's a dog eat dog world. Not everywhere. Some work environments are different, but generally, I know my son worked in Gauravani. He worked in Hollywood for some time, had some parts in a few movies. And I remember he told me, Pitta, he said, it's your best friend will stick a knife in your back to get a part with 6 more lines than another. It's all about how much, you can be. You want to be the star. If you can't be the star, you want to be the assistant. If you're not the assistant, this part has got 20 lines. This part's got 10 lines. This part, you only have 2 lines. So they want to work their way up the hierarchy. He said, I saw it, your best friend, just to get a look, they'll stick a knife in your back just to get a little bit better part. So this is the nature that's being described here about how this material intoxication with sense gratification, with wealth, with power, that it can actually bewilders people's minds. And we see that happening in the world around us too. It's not just in the scripture. We think of, those of you that keep up with the news, recently the governor of New York, big, powerful man, world famous during the initial COVID time. He was a guy who was on camera and he was taking charge and he was doing what he thought was best for the citizens. But because he couldn't control his desires, he's harassing women in the office. It all catches up to him. Everything tumbled down. The rest of what we watched there, we think, what's with this? He was why did he risk everything? Why did he risk everything? Obviously, he was arrogant. He thought that he could get away with these things. He was intoxicated. He didn't realize what a dangerous situation he was in. And he was very much in a materialistic perspective. He certainly wasn't seeing all those ladies as his mother. He's not seen other women to be respected. He's seen everything in the world as an object for my exploitation. I'm the governor. I can touch whoever I want to. I can say whatever I want to. And this is the effect. I'm listening to the audio version of Krishna Dharma Prabhu has an audio book of the Mahabharata. And I've read Subramaniam's version many times, and I read his one, but the audio version, it's fascinating because you can hear it when you're doing other things. And just reading the section where Krishna himself went to the Kauravas and said, look, I'm here on a peace mission. Let's not have this war. Please give the Pandavas their fair share. And Duryodhana was so proud and so envious. He said, as we know that the famous expression, he said, I won't give them 5 villages. I won't give them a much land to stick the head of a pin. So intoxicated. He's thinking, I'm the heir to all this. This is meant to be mine. I've tasted the joys of power. I'm not going to give any of this up. So here, a similar story is there, that the sons of the demigods, they become intoxicated, and it leads to conflict. And of course, another factor too that we see all around is people aren't satisfied. You think, okay, what's the problem? I go to Best Buy and I buy so many things, and then I throw it away in 6 months. Well, the problem is you're not happy in the process. In addition to the fact that you're filling the world with junk and global warming and climate change and all the things from overconsumption. Just putting that aside, looking from a totally selfish perspective, people aren't satisfied with this type of materialistic conception. I saw, and they become angry. When I landed at the airport here from Washington, I saw a man with a T-shirt, which I had never seen where I live, and it said, "Stand up for the Second Amendment." Thought, okay. And then I saw a bumper sticker on the back of a truck that said, "Protecting guns is not for duck hunters." I thought, what does that mean? I thought, well, this person's advertising the fact that I don't have my guns because I'm going to hunt. Hunting's a protected activity. Vaishnavas don't do it. Other people do it. It's even in our scriptures. Kings would go hunting. Okay, so we don't like it, but some people hunt. But he's got a bumper sticker saying hunting is not, guns aren't for shooting animals. What he really was saying, I have my guns in case I want to shoot people.
Yeah.
I want to have the power to shoot people. I was so shocked by that. I thought, how much anger has to be in a person's heart to advertise the fact I have the ability to kill other people. I mean, that's really what his bumper sticker was saying.
Yeah.
It was, it's not a question of freedom. His freedom was, I had the freedom to shoot people, not just ducks. Okay, it's bad enough you shoot ducks, but I have the ability to shoot people. So this just leads to like more conflict, more exploitation of the earth. And then all the reactions come. People buy all this stuff at Best Buy and it fills the oceans with plastic. People want to have more and more power and influence, and then they just exploit each other. And there's more class warfare. There's more religious warfare. There's more gender warfare. Where I live, Washington, D.C., the conflicts between the political parties, there's always conflicts between politicians. But in my lifetime, I've never seen it like this. They practically can't even talk to each other. There's no question of shared interests. It's all about, okay, you're in power. How do I get it back? I want to be in power. And when I get in power, it's not about working together. It's about how to keep you out of power. So these kind of increasing tendencies of this Kali Yuga. So the stories are all meant, these histories are meant to help us think things through a little bit and see, is there an alternative? And Narada Muni, by his special blessing, he's really giving these two demigods an alternative. This is a special option. They were such a mess, as they say, modern terms. They were such a mess. Narada just said, I'm going to make you trees for 100 years, and Krishna himself is going to deliver you. Now, for us, that's not the way things are going to work. But we can still get the mercy of saintly people like Narada by hearing their instructions and learning from them and making the right decisions ourselves. That's the unique feature of human form of life. We have this freedom, much more freedom than the lower species of life. We haven't developed an intelligence, and we can use that intelligence to make right choices. And then making those right choices means that we're making a conscious decision. I want to try to awaken higher consciousness. And it begins with making very small choices, very, very small choices, because we understand from the Gita, there's 3 modes of nature that are affecting our consciousness. Simple enough. It's summertime now. I just had this experience the other day. You're driving a car, you pull up at a stop sign, and the car next to you is going boom, 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 boom. And your whole body, gross and subtle, starts being affected by these vibrations. Or maybe, you pull up at a stoplight, Many of you may be from Indian origin. You pull up a stop the light and you're thinking about your family or, you know, your work, or maybe best of all, you're thinking about Krishna. Somebody pulls up next to you and there's some Bollywood song playing from 20 years ago. Instantly your mind goes back. Oh, I remember when I was in Delhi and they were playing that song. And oh, there was a guy across the room who looked cute, or I'd hope my parents arranged me to marry him instead of what, you know, whatever. The mind just starts going down, 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 just by that sound vibration. Just by that sound vibration. So we all have experience of this. And this is what happened to these demigods. They were the sons of Kuvera. I mean, the treasure of the universe. So how did they get corrupted? By improper association. So how do they get out of that? How do we get out of that? The solution for all of us is step-by-step dissociating with saintly people. And we all know, those of you that are parents, and you know, there's some little kids here and there's some youth tomorrow afternoon. Parents, we know what's the greatest fear of the parents is, who's my daughter, who's my son associating with, isn't it? You know, they go to junior high school, you want to make sure they have good friends. They go to high school, you want to make sure they have good friends. Parents are always concerned. They want to meet the friends of their kids. You know, I'm going to so-and-so's house. Well, who's going to be there? Isn't it? That's the question. Is it going to be those kids or those other kids? Why? Because we know you hang around with certain kids. Maybe we all have adults of us here know, maybe you had experience. You hang around with certain kids, you're doing really nice things. You hang around with other kids, you're doing not such nice things. So the same thing as adults, you know, you go to work, and if you hang out with that group of people that are passionately focused on just working their way up the ladder, doesn't matter who they step on, doesn't matter what they do, doesn't matter how they treat their fellow human beings, they just want a promotion, you start thinking like that. And if you associate with other people who are dutifully performing their job, you know, working for the company or maintaining their business, but they're making decisions, I'm not going to cross this line. I think of an example as a, you know, fellow householder. we closed it a few years ago, but my wife and I had a business, and a retail business, and we sold clothes and we sold some things for the home and jewelry and things. And we just made a decision, we're not going to sell any leather. Small decision, simple decision. But, you know, my wife would go to shows, and there would be dresses that came with a leather belt that were selling like crazy, that we could have made money off of. Nope, we're not going to sell those. Or purses, we wanted to sell purses, right? Ladies buy a lot of purses, but most purses were made of leather. So we just made a decision. We're not going to sell leather purses, and it cost us a lot of money, but we made that decision. So in a similar way, you know, we can see, even in terms of the world today, companies, and some of you may be coming, or maybe you already are, influential members of your companies. We can influence the world around us to be making the proper decisions. We can make decisions for ourselves. We can make decisions for our families, for our communities. We all have different, like they say, circle of influence. We have different degrees of influence. We can make the decisions to move people towards a more sattvic life, to move people towards a spiritual life, to start making spiritual choices. That's the opportunity that's there for each of us. And as this story is showing, by the association of saintly people, we can develop the strength to make those decisions. I remember as a student, I was a college student when I first was regularly meeting with devotees. I started walking across town. I was in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan, would walk across town to go to the temple in the evening. I can remember once or twice leaving there. I remember one evening, very kind of graphic memory. It was snowing out. It's Michigan. It's like the weather like here. It was cold. There was a lot of snow. And I was walking home feeling so elated. I don't remember what. I don't, because if the prasadam was so good, or the lecture was wonderful, or there was a drama, or just being, somehow I was just feeling so wonderful. I can remember even like writing the word Krishna in the snow on the way home. I mean, I was like just elated in that association. And I got back to my apartment, and I can still see myself opening the door of the apartment, like floating on clouds. There were two of my friends just kind of sitting in front of the stereo like college students do, just kind of in a, you know, in a dull state, with the rock music just blaring on them. And I remember I opened the door and feeling myself kind of like going down an elevator shaft about 10 floors. Just like from the association of devotees. And that's the experience. That's the experience. We have that choice. We have that choice. When we go to work, we may think, many of us, we have families, may tend to have to work. Okay, but within work, there's some scope of decisions that we can make. There's always some scope of freedom. Everybody gets a lunch hour. So do I hang out with those ladies who are just talking pajalpa and criticizing everybody? Or do I gracefully, with a smile on my face, tell them, thanks for the invitation, but I've got some other things I need to do today during lunch. And I go and I read my Bhagavatam, or I put in my earplugs and I'm listening to my earbuds. I'm listening to a class or something like that. We have that scope. Same way like you're doing this nice program on Sunday, teaching the children shlokas, teaching them to chant mantras, teaching them, about Krishna's stories. That's a choice you make. Other people are doing different things on Sunday morning. Of course, you have kids. You also should run around the park and have fun. I just read a letter from Prabhupada saying that children have a playful nature. And he said, we should train them in such a way that it's fun to serve Krishna. That's critical. We give our kids Krishna, but we also have to make sure that it's fun. So on Sunday mornings, we make it fun and we connect with Krishna. Other people making choice to forget Krishna on Sunday. But we make those steps one at a time. And I'll end with this. Prabhupada wrote, it was either Nectar Instruction or Ishopanishad. Prabhupada said, for every one step you take towards God, every one step we take towards Krishna, he takes 10 steps towards us. So sometimes we feel like, I can't do very much. I don't have much enthusiasm. I don't have much conviction. I don't have much determination. But we should just think, well, I can do this a little bit. I can chant another round. I can offer my food today. I can go to the temple one time. I can read one verse of the Bhagavad Gita. And you make that little step and Krishna's pleased by that and he'll reciprocate with us. That's his nature. As shown here, Narada wanted to curse these fellows. They were so bewildered, but he cursed them in such a way to get Krishna's mercy. And Krishna was thinking, I'm obliged. My devotee wants to deliver these two demigods. I have to do that. That's the nature of Krishna. He's a person. So in the same way, we know Lord Chaitanya, we know Prabhupada, we know our great acharyas. They all wanted to give Krishna. So that's their desire. So Krishna's fulfilling their desire. If we just take one little step, he'll also help us. So maybe I can stop there, Prabhu, and see if there's any questions or comments or anything anyone would like to share, any reflections on what we talked about. And I can't see everyone. Again, I'm on my phone. I apologize. So I'll let you call on people or however you want to do it, Prabhu.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhu. It was very nice. So first question I'll ask you is that since you were talking about the children that you really want to look at their associations when they're younger, when they're in junior or senior classes. But once they go to college, like you were in college one time, how do you really, because that's a practical problem for a lot of us whose kids are in college or they've gone out from the college and now in the beginning phase of their lives, and all that. How do you really advise them? Because obviously you cannot choose the association for them. How do you really tackle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. On the one hand, it's kind of like saying, how do you make sure a tree's straight once it's 20 feet high? Right?
Yes.
So it begins with young. It begins when the kids are young.
Yes.
That's the first thing. I'll kind of work through a few thoughts if I can. It really needs to begin when the children are young. And if they have fun with Krishna consciousness, if they have fun through spiritual practice, then that helps carry them through. They've got some momentum there. Also, very, very, very important thing. Children learn by watching more than listening or more than reading or something. So if a parent is saying, okay, you have to do this, the child's naturally say, well, what are you doing?
Yes.
So if the child sees that the parents are very careful about who they're choosing as association, if the child is seeing that the parents love to, read scripture, maybe they have kirtan together at home, and, they're building this spirit, the children learn that as an example. And if they're having fun, if they're getting, another important thing, are they getting answers for their questions? Sometimes people say, well, you should, like they say, do what I say, not what I do. But the children, they're young people, especially college, it's just the opposite. I'm going to do what you do. I'm not going to do what you say. I remember, again, an example, when I was in high school, these days, I've seen the signs here everywhere. It's not legal so much where I live. I think not so much, but now they've legalized marijuana. When I was in school, alcohol was legal, marijuana was not. And I remember there was a high school, what do they call it? When they bring all the students together. And the assistant principal was speaking to the students about how terrible marijuana was. It was illegal in those days. One young woman, smart, had some Shakti, she stood up, she said, Mr. So-and-so, I don't remember his name. She said, do you drink alcohol? And he said, yes, I do. She said, so how can you tell us not to smoke marijuana? And all the kids applauded. Because he'd been totally defeated. So, Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita, that verse, right? Whatever great man does, others follow. Prabhupada says, a teacher, you can't teach students not to smoke if you smoke. You can't teach kids to be spiritually focused if we're not spiritually focused. And we can't teach our children to take Krishna seriously or to take sattvic living seriously if we don't. So start young, make sure that it's fun, live the example yourself. And then also, I think it's extremely important to maintain lines of communication, because our kids are not they're not clones of us. From another side, I remember years and years ago, we hosted VHP in Denver 30 years ago. Wanted to have a meeting, and they used our temple conference hall for part of it. And I remember one of the young men, maybe 20, standing up and challenging his parents and the whole assembly, 200 people. This was like the adults meeting the youth session. He said it's statistically impossible that 75% of any ethnic group want to become doctors. That was his roundabout way of saying, stop forcing us to do what you want us to do.
Right.
Help us do what we want to do. So, especially kids that are raised in America, I mean, we may have a concept, especially those who are still older, of Indian origin, how maybe we were more kind of trained with duty and what my parents want. And I was an engineer because my dad wanted to be an engineer, whatever. It's not like that today. So we have to be sensitive to the kids growing up in America. They've got more sense of self-expression, and we should be open to that. And we should have dialogue. We should be able to have conversation with them. What are you thinking about? I'll end with this last thing. I remember my son Gorvani, he went to public school. Those of you who know Gorvani, the kirtan leader, everybody thinks, wow, Gorvani, now he's older, but we used to get questions. How'd you raise your son like that? He's such a great devotee. He just chants so beautifully. And it was like, well, we had a few rough years. We had a few rough years. It's not like, he was chanting 16 rounds and found the 4 Vedas principles his whole life. He also went out and, experimented with different lifestyles and different philosophies. But I think in part because we were dedicating ourselves sincerely, because we never said, look, you're doing nonsense. We don't want anything to do with you. We said, look, we'd like to see you do better. And we always kept that relation, because the parents love the kids. Like, where the kid may go ahead and do nonsense, but the parent still has that relationship.
Yes.
And that's also important for young people to know, I'm never rejected by my parents.
Right.
And sometimes, they're individual souls. Sometimes they're going to have to learn, like they say, the school of hard knocks.
Right.
Statistically, we know that some of our kids, they go away, we do everything possible, and they still go away, and they have to, Malik Guevara,
Yes.
Wani Griva, they got into nonsense. It's going to happen a percentage of time. We can minimize it by the things I mentioned. But if they do, keep that relationship and try to keep encouraging them in the spiritual path.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was a long answer, but that was a very complicated question, you know?
No, thank you so much. It really helps because I think many of us are in such situation where we don't know how to really handle, you know, and it was a great answer. Thank you so much. And I'll open it to...
Let him know you love him no matter what.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll open it to everybody else now. If there are any questions, please.
And it can be about anything. It can be about Narada Muni, or it can be about raising children, or anything.
Pawan, do you have any questions?
We have a little one with questions. I see a hand up.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I can ask if is that okay?
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This is Pawan here. Yeah. So I was just reading Bhagavatam yesterday morning, like Canto 2, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service. And there, like, that's the initiation. I was just thinking, like, how crucial this blessing or mercy to get into devotional service. Because in this case, like Kubera, I mean, their sons were opulent, beautiful, you know, I don't know the knowledgeable, but they're certainly like heavenly planet people. So,
Yeah.
but still they were not deity, right? Like, so, but it's at the same time so hard to find a bona fide spiritual master who can impart that mercy, despite all doing all the efforts we do, right, in our life and trying to get into some sort of devotional service. But just wanted to hear your thought on that, you know, like in your case, you got mercy from Srila Prabhupada directly to be able to continue your lifetime, you know, devotional service despite all the impediments or, you know, things coming in life, right? And person like me who is still in early age and trying to get into, you know, and stay steady. And that's the most challenging. I would want to, you know, get some tips and how to stay steady in devotional service for long term.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing just regarding the question of mercy, it's described, and I think this is very wise. We should keep in mind, we should pray and we should meditate as if everything depends on God's mercy. And we should act as if everything depends upon us. You know, sometimes people, I mentioned in class here today, Gauravani told me a joke the other day. There was a man who was in great need of money. And he was a religious fellow. So he was praying, dear God, please let me win the lottery. Do they have a lottery here in Missouri?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's everywhere. So he was praying, dear God, please let me win the lottery. Please let me. And he never won the lottery. And he was praying and praying and praying. It was such a challenge. And then one day he had a dream and God came and he spoke to him. And his name was John. He said, John, buy a lottery ticket. So he was never winning the lottery, but he wasn't buying the ticket. So, you know, it's like, dear Krishna, please let this happen. Please let that. But we have to, our whole process is a reciprocal one. So the mercy is there. And I heard one time Prabhupada was asked, at what stage of devotional service do we get the mercy of the spiritual master? And Prabhupada said, you know, we may think, do I get it when I come to the temple, when I get first initiation, when I start distributing books, when I second initiation, when I become a vanaprastha, you know, when is the mercy? Prabhupada said, when you begin to follow the instructions. So, you know, we read, you know, you read the, you know, the whatever, you know, somebody just, you get a book even from outside our tradition, you know, somebody picks up like, you know, a little Christian tract and it says, you know, be nice to your neighbors. And you start being nicer to your neighbors. Krishna knows, oh, he's, you know, You've gotten some mercy from God. Or you go to Bhagavatam class and you hear somebody who's not a, particularly specially important person in one sense. Everyone's important, Vaishnavas are important, but they give 1 or 2 points in that class that makes a lot of sense to you, and you start doing that. So you're accepting that mercy. So like myself, you mentioned, Prabhu, okay, I got mercy of Prabhupada. I didn't see Prabhupada until like a week before I got initiated. I came in 1975. I got initiated 76. I saw Prabhupada gave a few morning classes over a period of what they used to call the Mayapur Vrindavan pilgrimage. So, there with Prabhupada, I never went on a morning walk. I don't have one letter. I had one conversation with Prabhupada, which was, he said, how many rounds will you chant? I told him 16. He asked me, what are the regular principles? He gave me my name. That was it. So I think that for all of us, we hear Vapu and Vani, right? There's a physical association with the Guru, and there's the instructions. And Prabhupada is very clear. He said many times the instructions are more important than the physical association. So getting the mercy of the Guru means hearing primarily, and then acting on that, reciprocating with that, serving as best we can. And when we do that, then we get more mercy. We learn more, because it's just like a teacher in the school. They try to teach you 2 + 2 = 4. If you don't get that down, they're not going to go on to multiplication, isn't it? They're going to hold you back until okay, I got it. 2 + 2 = 4. What comes next? So in the same way, Krishna, he sends us messages. I was out on a walk the other day, a japa walk. I was sitting on a bench. Some lady walked by. She started talking to me. She was a Jehovah's Witness, and we had a nice conversation. And she was telling me that her grandfather, kind of like the joke I told before, but this wasn't a joke. She said her grandfather told her when she was young that if we pray, dear God, please guide my steps, then we have to make sure we're walking.
Yes.
So I never met this lady before. I'm sure she's not a vegetarian. She's definitely not chanting Hare Krishna. But she was a mercy of God to me that day, because she gave me a nice instruction. She reminded me of how I can serve Krishna nicely. So, as we advance in Krishna consciousness, ultimately we know the pure devotees described, right? They see Krishna everywhere. Who can fathom what exactly that means? But often they see Krishna. So even in our lesser stages, we can begin to hear the messages of Krishna and see the knowledge of Krishna everywhere we go. We see a highway accident. Shastra Chakshus. We see it through the eyes of Shastri. Oh, look how dangerous this life is. I need to be serious about my spiritual life. Someone gets mad at us. We think, okay, they're chastising. Thank you, Krishna. This is my chance to become a little more tolerant, a little more humble. That's mercy. That's mercy. The bus is late. We can say, all right. I was trying to go someplace the other day and I messed up. I dropped my wallet, just left my wallet behind, had to turn around, lost half an hour. I'm thinking, all right, Krishna, what am I meant to learn here? First of all, to be more careful. And then I have to think also, okay, who knows? Maybe there was some accident down the road he saved me from. I don't know, etc. So when you talk about the mercy of Krishna, the mercy of Guru, I think it's important that we realize that the mercy of Krishna is all around us 24 hours a day. We just have to see it. It's not just like sometimes we see in a temple, even devotees will get initiated. You don't see them for 6 months. And then their Diksha Guru comes to the temple and they come, 3 days in a row. They're there all day long. They're dancing, singing, jumping up and down in front of their Guru. And then he leaves and they leave, even though they live 10 miles away. And we think, well, they may think, oh, we came to get the mercy. They missed the mercy. They completely missed the mercy, because the mercy of the Guru is to encourage us how to engage in Krishna service. If we only do that in the physical presence of the Guru, we completely misunderstood his message. So eventually we'll get it. It's nice they come for those 3 days. That's a good thing. We appreciate it. Fill them up with prasadam. That'll purify them. Hearing a few lectures, that'll certainly purify them. But if that's all they do, they've got a long ways to go. So that mercy program just maybe suggesting we all have to expand our vision of seeing where that mercy is, and we'll see we're surrounded by it. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, I think that
Thank
is very helpful. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhu, Diksha, our one of the youngest attendees, has a question. She was raising
Yes,
her hand for a long time.
She had her hand up very patiently.
Yes.
She's one of the, I only see 4 people. She's one of the
Yes.
4 people on my screen. So yes, she's very patient.
Yes. Diksha, go ahead.
I have a question. Why is Krishna blue?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. These are the kind of profound questions only children can ask. Prabhupada was also asked that question, and I think he answered it a few different ways. One time he said, because the sky is blue, because it's so beautiful. Krishna is the most beautiful. But we also understand Krishna comes in every color, right? Lord Chaitanya is yellow colored or golden colored. Lord Ramachandra is green, right? Lord Varaha, I believe, is reddish color. So actually, all the colors come from Krishna. So every single color we know, also Krishna appears with that particular color. So Krishna is bluish is described because he's the most attractive, and that color is described as being the most attractive. So it's not so much that Krishna is blue, it's blue comes from Krishna. What do you think? Does that make sense? Do you like blue?
Yes.
Okay, that's why Krishna is blue.
Thank you.
Is that your little brother there crawling around with you?
Yes.
How old is he?
2 years.
2. How old are you?
6.
Oh, you're a very big sister then. Are you teaching your little brother to be Krishna conscious?
Yeah.
Are you setting a nice example for him? Good. Then you're going to get all kinds of mercy from Krishna.
He's in good association.
Yeah, very good association.
Any other questions for Prabhu?
I think I have a question, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat pranams. Please accept my humble.
Prabhu.
Thank you for the nice class, Prabhu, and very nice points about importance of association. Should start from the early ages, in the childhood ages, and
Yeah, ideally we can't. That doesn't always happen, but that's the ideal.
Yeah. So a question about workplace. So sometimes, like due to work obligations, we would have to associate with certain people, and in a meetings or anything, like they talk all kind of things other than work related, right? So that corrupt our consciousness, right? So how should one take it? And any suggestions, or so what should be the mode of devotee also at that point? So
Well, there's certain things we can control, and there's some things we can't control. And I think that, it's like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who's moderate, or sometimes translated, one who's regulated in their habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation can mitigate all pains by the yoga process. So a lot of times things we do in our Krishna consciousness, we have to do the best we can. You just do the best we can. And we pray to Krishna to help us and to guide us. And, Krishna also mentions the Gita. He specifically says every endeavor is covered by some degree of fault. So sometimes as devotees, we put too much pressure on ourselves. We think that actually I'm supposed to, I'm going to become like perfectly Krishna conscious in the sense I never make a mistake. I only associate with pure people. Everything I do is everything I do. Every thought I have is Krishna conscious. And That's the ideal, but that's not going to be the reality for the vast majority of us. For most of us, it's we try to do what we can, the very best we can for Krishna, and he'll help us. So like in a work environment, we don't want to disturb our minds into thinking that, okay, there's some bad association here, I should quit. But if I quit, there's no other jobs. If I don't have another job, then okay, I think I can't feed my family. Well, then Krishna will have to feed me, but I'm not pure enough to depend upon, you get in this vicious mental cycle. So better than that, I think, is to just keep in mind, actually, Krishna loves us. We're Krishna's eternal parts and parcels. And just like Arjuna, you read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna took away all of Arjuna's doubts. But then you go back and read the Mahabharata, he forgot at least once again. There was at least once, maybe twice again. He gets bewildered and Krishna has to kind of like give him a few more verses again. So even Arjuna, Krishna was there for him to help him make progress and to do the best that he could, even there with his eternal associate. So we should remember that as a principle, Krishna is helping me. I am his eternal part and parcel. I have an eternal relationship with him that's just temporarily covered over. It's not that I'm dirty and I need mercy to change who I am. I am eternally connected. I'm a pure devotee of Krishna and I become covered over. So every little step I can take to becoming a little more purified, a little cleaner, is progress. Every single little step. So if we're in a work environment, maybe there's some guy that like literally, talks about, sinful stuff all day long. Probably other people in the office are also avoiding that guy. Because it's not like the whole, there's always pious people. I remember a devotee friend was in medical school, someplace like in the Bahamas. Devotee is a doctor now, is based out of Baltimore. And he was telling me that he had a Muslim friend, a Catholic friend, and I think a Sikh friend. And they all helped each other because they were in this island full of illicit sex, intoxication, meeting, and gambling. It was like a, island paradise. But, the Sikh friend, was pushing him to, be strict on your vegetarianism. And the Muslim friend was, convincing everybody, we don't want to drink, let's do something else. And the other friend was, the Catholic friend was like, look, you don't want to hang around with girls or boys, because you want to marry a nice person, a person of faith. So in that association, even if it wasn't Vaishnava association, they strengthen each other in their own spiritual commitment. So in the same way in the office, usually there's at least a couple people that are a little more pious. So hang out with them more. Avoid the people that are really troublesome. And once in a while, you just have to kind of say to people, Sam, I really don't like those kind of jokes. And, I like you, you're a good guy, but those kind of jokes kind of like disturb me. So at least when we're together, I'd appreciate if you didn't tell those kind of jokes. I mean, it takes a look. I mean, you don't necessarily want to say that to your new boss. That might have been the best way to start it out. But, or sometimes you say to Sam, Sam, I really like you. You're a good guy. You do a lot of good work. But I don't want you to feel bad because you may have noticed I kind of like, I don't want to sit with you during lunch. And the reason is because, the stuff you talk about, it kind of goes against my spiritual practice. And I don't want to offend you. And, you have your own choices, but it's not good for me. I love to hang out with you if you don't want to talk about something else, but I don't want to talk about what you did at the nightclub last night. I'm not interested in that. But, if you want to talk about other stuff, anything better than that, like that. So I think if you, start out by look for the positive association, try to gracefully avoid the negative. Sometimes you're able to say to people, look, this is why, I'm not going to do this. Sometimes you got it. I know I've got friends that live in a work environment where, they avoid happy hour as much as they can, but they feel like once a month, if they don't hang out with their team, they're really isolated. So they go once a month and they order Perrier water and they leave after half an hour.
I'm in the
You
same
know,
boat.
yeah, yeah. But they also know if I hang out here an hour, you know, or if I agree to go and meet them at Friday night at 9 o'clock, you know, or okay, tonight they're going to a restaurant. Maybe I'll go to a restaurant at Perrier, right? But I'm not going to go to that club with those girls that are dancing, right? I mean, you know, those options are out there. So you also, you pick and choose. Okay, I'll do this because I think I can maintain my Krishna consciousness that far, but I'm not going to put myself at risk and do other stuff. And they'll appreciate, you know, I mean, you know, people are educated these days, and if you know, they'll know why you're doing what you're doing. And you can tell them, you know, I practice yoga, I practice meditation, I'm Hindu, I'm a Krishna devotee, whatever we want to tell them. They'll respect you for that if you tell them in a nice way. And also you tell them a way like, look, I'm not going to do this because it's sinful. That doesn't go down so good. But it's, you know, I'm not going to do that because it's my religion. In my religion, I choose this instead of that.
Yeah.
So you're kind of talking about your, you know, what your commitments are without criticizing their choices. And you know what happened after a while, many of you probably had experience, you know, some lady in the office or some guy in the office comes up after a week or a month or 6 months and says, hey, can I talk to you? I just saw that whole big blow up in the office and so criticized you and blamed you for something you didn't do. And you didn't even speak up. How do you do that? How were you so tolerant? How is it you put up with this? Why didn't you start yelling back? And that's when you tell me, you really want to know? They say, yeah, what are you doing on Sunday? I'll show you. Right? Or take one of these books home. Or you know that food I bring from home you make fun of? Try some of this. Or you know those beads you've seen in my desk? Let me bring you a prayer. I'll teach you a mantra, make you more peaceful. See, in that way, the work environment also it's like a book distribution, right? Once in a while you meet somebody and go, what is this book? It's about God. He's blue. He's Krishna. He plays the flute. You give them everything. And other times with a book, it's like, this will make you more peaceful. Can you chip in? It relieves stress, depending on what they can take. So just like a book distributor, you don't give everybody everything. You give them as much as they can take. So same thing in the office. You become a source of spiritual goodness and Krishna consciousness. Even little steps helping people. You become like the little, you know, without anybody knowing it, in a subtle way, you become the guru in the office just by how you behave. Even if nobody knows and nobody appreciates, and you're thinking, God, this is Krishna, this is such a difficult situation. But you're thinking, how can I make this a little more spiritual? How can I make this a little more mode of goodness? And the next thing you know, you're in charge of the office, and you tell everybody, hey, for the holiday party this year, I'm going to cater, and it's going to be vegetarian. You guys are going to love it, right? And the next thing you know, a couple years later, you're in charge of the office decor, and and the music they put on the track, and you put in a few kirtans there in the mix with everything else that goes on, right? Your circle of influence grows, isn't it? And gradually, you put a little bit more, spirituality or Krishna consciousness, depending on the environment. Some places it's easier. Some places it's harder. So sometimes devotees say, well, how do I be Krishna conscious at work? Well, do your duty. Arjuna had to do warfare, right? I mean, none of us are being asked to, kill our grandfathers. I mean, what's tougher than that? We just have to go to work and deal with a bunch of materialistic people and try to increase the sales by 2%. I mean, that's pretty mundane, but it's not civil war. So Arjuna could spiritualize it. So we can spiritualize it. Isn't it? People come along. Who's that girl? Who's that picture of that girl? Oh, that's not a girl. That's Krishna. Who's Krishna? Right? What are those beads you have in your desk? What are those beads around your neck? Again, how come you don't get angry? What's that funny food you have? Right? And then you bring them cookies on their holiday. Devotees are kind. Somebody's birthday's coming up. You have your wife or whatever. You buy a vegan cake. You offer it. You bring them a special cake. It melts their heart. People are not so much used to like friendly, affectionate deal. I mean, they're there. It's not like the world's. We're not at the end of Kali Yuga yet. But devotees, when we show compassion and care for people, they notice. They notice. You may not see the results right away, but they notice.
Mhm.
Can I end with one story? It's a book story, but I think the same thing is there in other ways we deal with people. There's some devotees, there's a family in Washington, D.C. And they were putting books in hotels. And they went to one hotel and the man said, no, I don't want to put them out. And they said, well, just keep this one for you. And we'll, think about it. We'll check with you in a couple of days. True story. I know the people this happened to. So they left the Bhagavad Gita on the counter. A few hours later, somebody checks into the hotel, asked the owner, what's this book? I don't know, somebody left it here. Can I borrow it? Sure. Took it to their room. The next day, that man came back and told the hotel owner, he said, this is like, you almost want to cry, hear the story. True story again. I actually checked in your hotel last night. I was going to commit suicide in your hotel. People do that sometimes in hotel rooms. He said, but I read this book. It completely turned my whole vision around. And now I see there's something else to live for. And the hotel owner called him up. That's how they know. Call him up, said, hey, I want one of those books, every one of my rooms.
Mhm.
If for no other reason, he's thinking, I don't want people killing themselves in my hotel. So it's a little insurance policy. And if it's a pious guy, he's thinking, wow, that you're turning people's lives around, So of course, that doesn't happen every time. Things aren't so spontaneous, but little bits of light, I mean, sometimes we forget. Prabhupada would say good morning to people. We think, well, Prabhupada just sit down and tell everybody you got to chant 16 rounds every person he met. No. Devotees in the UK, they tell the story. Prabhupada had a meeting with this guy. Can't remember his name. It was a Formula One race car driver, famous driver. They said Prabhupada just talked about race cars with them for an hour. Devotees were shocked. So Prabhupada can talk with somebody about race cars to build a relationship, build a friendship. Okay, go to work, you got to listen to some guy talk about his lawn, right? Talk about his weeds, talk about the problems he's having with his kids, talk about his marriage problems, talk about his motorcycle, whatever it is. You have to put up with that a little bit. But then you look for opportunity to inject a little Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. So many points.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much for such loaded instruction. Very, very nice. Thank you so much.
Well, Krishna consciousness is
I think we
practical.
are running out of.
Some nights we think it's not practical. It's the most practical thing. The most practical thing.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank
And
you.
if any of you
Thank you,
can come to the
Prabhu.
temple, I'll be giving a talk at the temple tomorrow also.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
So I'll sign off now. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Pranam.
Jai Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakapat Varsya Kripa Dubhyaya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for attending, all of you, and hope you can join the other programs.